In this episode of the Orange Nerd Show, we are celebrating 35 years of The Little Mermaid, an animated film that changed Disney forever. We're talking about it, we're breaking it down up next on the Orange Nerd Show. Welcome aboard, everybody, to another episode of the Orange Nerd Show. Here on the Orange Nerd Show, we do it differently here. Basically, we talk about everything really except the parks. So we talk studio, movies, streaming. We talk, even reaction videos to like K-pop and rap and all kinds of hip hop. We do it all here on the Orange Nerd Show. But life is bigger than just theme parks, right? So we want to have an outlet, a show here on the channel where we can kind of dive into other things. And Orange Nerd is where that is at. George, though, welcome back, sir. Where can everybody find you on social media, sir?
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You can also find me on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you can find me right here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
There he is. All right. So 35 years this month of The Little Mermaid. Now, this movie's crazy, right? Because this movie really did change the game for Disney. There's a few animated films in Disney's history that have done that changed the trajectory of the company. Snow White, obviously one of them. Toy Story in '95 was one of them. I know it's technically Pixar, but now it's still Pixar, but it's Disney though, right? That movie changed the trajectory of the company forever. Little Mermaid is another one of those movies. Disney was really going through a dark time before Little Mermaid.
They were sinking.
They were sinking.
No pun intended.
Right? They were sinking. Exactly. They were sinking. And the animators got kicked out of the studio. They were working on like bungalows and stuff like that. It was a dark time. There were real questions that should Disney continue to do animation? That's where we were at. And that's why I love Michael Eisner so much, because when he came in, he really did save this studio in so many ways. He talked about it in Waking Sleeping Beauty, right? Where can they get this thing going again? He's like, we have to, and Little Mermaid was that movie that really jump-started the whole thing. So Mermaid was a massive financial and cultural hit. It still is, it's still massive all these years later, 35 years later. And then Mermaid, then we got Beauty and the Beast, and then we got Aladdin and Lion King. It just went on and on and on. It triggered this whole Renaissance era in animation. But like we say here on the channel all the time, Disney is a studio first more than anything. And that studio feeds and pumps out, right? So when you have the hit movies, it helps the theme parks, because now you have this hit IP now that you can put in your theme parks with shows, attractions, and what have you. So when Mermaid kicked off this Renaissance era, it revitalized the entire company. They were doing Little Mermaid shows and all kinds of parades. Same with Lion King and all this stuff. It revitalized everything at Disney, and it was all because of the Little Mermaid. But George, 35 years of the Little Mermaid. What are your thoughts on this, brother?
It's weird to say, because it's basically a timeless piece. You look at the Little Mermaid today and it still looks as flawless as it did back in 1989. And you just go back and you think, has it really been 35 years? Like that's just crazy to me, because I grew up watching the Little Mermaid, even though I was a 90s kid, but it was on that teeter-totter of just ending in the 80s but just beginning the 90s. So I was still part of that era, moving forward, as you had mentioned, with Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, so on and so forth. And because it was really very dark times, or I guess I should say dark waters.
Yeah, exactly.
After the fact that Walt passed, they were scrambling at the studio, really trying to figure out
actually, maybe not scrambling, maybe floundering would be a better word.
There you go. Yeah, that's it. No one likes a scuzzlebutt,
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, they were trying to get their niche, trying to find that special lightning in a bottle, so to speak, of without their their fearless leader, like, how do we get back to what we do best, and that is produce great storytelling in animation. And not saying that none of the movies after Walt's passing weren't any good, but it was a bit of the lackluster point, that there was not like a connection to it. But the Little Mermaid was that spearhead, and yeah, Michael Eisner was like the head of that. But I know we're probably going to get into that, but there were key factors of what made not only the Little Mermaid a crown jewel in Disney animation, but the whole moving forward of the Renaissance era. And that was the collaboration with Disney, with Alan Menken, and the phenomenal, brilliant work of Howard.
Yes. Yeah. Howard Ashman was, I mean, what an incredible talent. What an incredible talent. This movie, in A Little Mermaid, obviously, but also Beauty and the Beast, and even a little bit of Aladdin, would not have been the hits they were, the cultural phenoms that they were, if not for Howard Ashman. I mean, this man, these songs that he created built those movies. They built those movies around those temples, those songs. And that's what made these movies so special.
He was so heavy into the character study, and how to bring the personalities out of the characters through song, because he came from Broadway, so when you take that Broadway style performances, and you add that not only to the big screen, but to an animated film, like the opening sequence of Beauty and the Beast with Belle, you'd think that you were like literally watching a Broadway musical.
Right.
And Disney never really done anything like that before on that grand of scale. But because of Howard Ashman, he brought so much character and life into those films that began with The Little Mermaid.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is also, not to get like, well, I'll just say it. Basically, Howard Ashman, he kind of shows how much the LGBTQ community has had such an impact on the Walt Disney Company, right? Like, I know a lot of people like to paint this as like a divisive thing or whatever. Now it's trendy to like, have this fight, right? Where it's like woke versus this and versus that. But Disney, the people of the Walt Disney Company, the creatives, right? People like Howard Ashman were vital in this company. And he was part of that LGBTQ community. And when people say like, Disney's woke for supporting that community or this, that, and the other, Disney should support that community. I mean, if not for that community, people like Howard Ashman, there likely wouldn't even be at Disney right now. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, come on, you know what I'm saying? I get it. There's politics involved with all this crap, but like, I think that he was so important, and this community is so important. Disney, not even just Howard Ashman, but if you look at like Disneyland Resort, like the parks, a big chunk of these cast members that the magic makers, right, are part of the LGBTQ community, right? And it's like you can't ignore that.
Of it.
Right, or ally supporters of it. Exactly. So it's like, it's such a big part of Disney and what Disney is. And that's why when people kind of narrow it down into just like, well, it's just Bob Iger being woke. No, it's not. These cast members, Howard Ashman, there's countless examples of how important this community has been for the Walt Disney Company, Well,
I'm glad you brought that up, because it really is true. Because for the people that do bash the LGBTQ plus community, and saying, everything's gone woke, everything's gone this and that in the Walt Disney Company. But then they go back and they say, why can't they make content as good as The Little Mermaid? Why can't they make content as good as Beauty and the Beast? Well, if you actually did your research, you'd know someone that was part of the LGBTQ plus community did make good product like The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast.
Right.
So it doesn't matter who is making the product. It's just matter is, are they talented enough to make good product?
Well, and little Ursula was modeled, and this isn't like speculation or theory or anything like that. Ursula was modeled after a trans, I forgot her name. Was it Divine?
Divine, a drag queen. Yeah.
Yeah, a drag queen, Divine. Okay, was modeled after Divine. Now, can you imagine if that would have happened today? The outrage you'd see on YouTube and what have you. Oh my God, look at woke Disney modeling a character in a kids movie after a drag queen. There'd be outrage you wouldn't believe. Ursula is one of the best villains Disney has ever made, ever done, right? She's up there with Maleficent and all the greats, so I wanted to bring that up because I think with this movie in particular, with Ursula and with, Howard Ashman and what have you, that community has had such a big part in it. And it's important to at least bring that up and how vital they were to this movie. You know what I'm
saying? They are part of our world.
Yeah, exactly. They're part of your world. Absolutely. So it's incredible. And you're right. You also bring up the what's the word for it? The timelessness of The Little Mermaid and how it stood the test of time. When you watch this movie, it doesn't feel like a movie from 35 years ago. It really doesn't, it feels like something very, very relevant today. It feels very, it's aged very well. There's certain movies where you watch them and okay, that's a movie of its time, right? Like Oliver and Company. You go watch Oliver and Company and you're like, okay, 1980s. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Very much so, or Bedknobs and Broomsticks is another one. I feel like that's very of its era. You can tell.
Right. Yes.
This one, no. Little Mermaid is timeless, absolutely timeless. So,
yeah. And for anyone who has not yet seen the documentary Howard, I highly recommend to do so. It tells the great backstory of how he started out as a young boy and moved into Broadway, and then collaborated with Disney, and just the life of this man who basically transformed the Walt Disney back to color, so to speak. And and again, I've mentioned this before many times on the channel, but I have to mention again every time we talk about Howard Ashman. It's like when they dedicated at the end of Beauty and the Beast to his memory with the saying, to our friend Howard, who gave a mermaid her voice and a beast his soul, we are eternally grateful. I mean, how can you come on.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Every time I say that,
it's such a beautiful tribute to a beautiful mind, a beautiful man. I mean, this guy Howard. I mean, I'm telling you, I have fawned over Howard Ashman. You go back to my old videos, search my channel and type in Howard Ashman. How many videos have we done on Howard Ashman? You know what I'm saying? He's just incredible. What he did for the Walt Disney Company. If you're a Disney fan, I mean, you really should be thanking Howard Ashman because he saved this company in so many ways.
Yes, absolutely.
He saved this company. And it's crazy to think how you're still seeing his impact. There's when the Little Mermaid live action movie came out, right? When the Little Mermaid live action movie came out recently, right? With Halle Bailey, right? Who I'm a huge fan of hers. I love her. Yes. She's gorgeous.
Beautiful voice too.
Beautiful voice. Obviously physically beautiful. I mean, she's amazing. She seems like a total sweetheart. But when that movie came out, there were little girls singing these songs again, right? Little girls, right? Singing these songs again. Actually, I'm into K-pop, right? Actually, Danielle from New Jeans, she sang, I think it was Part of Your World for the Korean version of the live action movie, right? She sang the Korean version of it, and she's a young girl. Danielle is, really young, but it's weird, not weird, but good weird to see this younger generation singing and memorizing these lyrics. Kids who have only been around, kids who are only toddlers or not toddlers, but young kids or even tweens or whatever. They know the words to these songs that Howard wrote 35 plus years ago. The impact of this man is still strong. All this almost 40 years later.
Which even the fight to even keep the song Part of Your World into the movie, because it was Jeffrey Katzenberg that wanted that song removed, thinking no kid is going to sit through this kind of soft ballad kind of music. And
right.
I mean, that became basically the identity. That song became the identity of who Ariel was.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why Katzenberg, you know what? It's in hindsight, in absolute hindsight, Michael Eisner made the right move. When Katzenberg was demanding more and being promoted or whatever he wanted out of Eisner, and they refused him, and he moved on and started DreamWorks. At the time, it looked like a big mistake. Honestly, in my opinion, it wasn't. I mean, in hindsight, when we hear about these stories about how Katzenberg fought to get part of your world removed and things like that, then he goes and starts DreamWorks. And look, you can like DreamWorks movies. I have no problem with a lot of the DreamWorks movies. I think that new one they had. What was the new one that you just saw, George, with the robot? I forgot the name of it.
Oh boy. Oh,
Was it
Wild Robot.
Wild Robot? Okay, gorgeous. I heard it's a gorgeous movie. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying every DreamWorks movie is trash. Well, mind you, Katzenberg's been away from the DreamWorks thing for a while now anyway. So anything new right now has nothing to do with him. Right. But when DreamWorks started, they started off pretty strong. You know, Prince of Egypt was a gorgeous movie. Holy shit, that was a gorgeous movie. But then they got into like this weird, like trendy meta stuff, like with Shrek and all that, and Shark Tale and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, you know, but for me, it was like those movies. And I know a lot of people like Shrek and all that, but they don't hold a candle really to like what Disney was doing with that Renaissance era.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it felt like for me when Katzenberg left, it was kind of like we saw more of the true Katzenberg when he went over to DreamWorks. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, as a Disney fan who's more into the Renaissance style films and not so much into the DreamWorks style films, I wasn't so upset that he left because I don't want to see that kind of stuff at Disney necessarily. You know what I'm saying? So
well, that's where at that time when they were kind of like having that tension between Katzenberg and the company, that he even tried to have a say-so against Pixar with Toy Story, primarily with the creation of Woody. You know, Katzenberg wanted Woody to kind of be this kind of like snarky, kind of like rigid, like bite your tongue kind of character. And to Lasseter's credit, despite of how people feel about him, he said, okay, do we want to make the movie that we want to make, or are we going to go based off of like what a corporate, you know, entity is going to say? So they ended up scrapping all of that and basically starting over to what now Toy Story is today, which that's how everybody loves Woody. You know, Woody is a very lovable character. And I think that really ticked Katzenberg off. And I think that was like the tip of the iceberg where he was just like, you know what, I'm done. Like,
yeah. It was best that he moved on, you know, like nothing against him as a person or anything. It's just his style of the stuff that his style of animation or whatever he was trying to do. I just think that, I don't know. I was okay to see him go. I think that Disney was okay without him. At the time, though, it felt like a huge loss because we didn't really know the inside baseball. But after hearing that stuff, especially with Little Mermaid, I was like, you can have.
Yeah.
You can have him,
they might have thought that, you know, he would have been better moving forward. But sometimes when you think the seaweed is always greener, you know, it.
Yeah. The seaweed's not always greener on the other side, right? Yeah. Exactly. So it's crazy.
I do have to say, too, on top of just all of that, also the phenomenal voiceover work that brought these characters to life. The phenomenal Jodie Benson, who brought Ariel to life. The late Pat Carroll, who did the voice of Ursula. The late Kenneth Mars for Triton. The late Samuel E. Wright for Sebastian, and the late great Buddy Hackett for Scuttle.
Incredible voice cast in this movie. Incredible talent behind the scenes, animators like Glenn Keane, who did Ariel.
Yes.
Right. I mean, there's just so much brilliance put into this movie. You know, it was such a beautiful film and such a beautiful era of Disney. I love the comeback story. I love that comeback story of how Disney Animation was down and out, this close from going away. And then here they go. They swing for the fences and they hit that home run, and company saved, animation saved, and animation. Disney's been strong ever since. I mean, you know, we've had some some dips and lulls along the way, right? We had Chicken Little, and things like that. But for the most part, we've been okay now. Like Disney hasn't had that low like it did back then, where they were really in danger of losing animation at Disney. We haven't had that, knock on wood, since then. Yeah, you're going to have movies along the way that are not so great. You're going to have maybe, a few movies in a row that are not so great. But overall, Disney animation as a whole has been strong ever since Mermaid, I think. We haven't had this existential crisis where we were worried that Disney wasn't going to do animation anymore. So it's an amazing film. Happy 35 years, Little Mermaid. Howard Ashman, legend forever. We will never, ever forget Howard Ashman. And shout out and love to all the people involved in this movie, Glenn Keane and Jodie Benson, and, just an incredible team.
Alan Menken.
Yep. Absolutely. So yeah, everybody home, comment down below on what you think of The Little Mermaid 35 years. You post it here in the comments, or you can post it on Instagram. That's kidding. Instagram, right?
And you can use your cell phone.
You could use your cell phone if you want. There you go. Exactly. So, George, any final thoughts before we swim out of here?
Yeah, just to echo your thoughts. Happy 35 years to The Little Mermaid, and many happy more moving forward. This is a tremendous milestone, I guess, or a tremendous pearl. Whatever you want to call it. I mean, a pearl is not necessarily 35, but I'm just trying to throw in the puns here. People, work with me here.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But yeah, it's as I said, it's a timeless piece, and we hold a lot to The Little Mermaid moving forward. And as I said, it's it'll be forever part of that Disney legacy moving forward. No matter, even in the next 35 years, it'll just be as timeless as it is today.
Absolutely, this movie is ingrained in the Disney DNA now forever. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's just as much Disney as Cinderella or anything else. It's so ingrained, and that's a huge tip of the hat to people like Howard Ashman, who made that possible. So incredible movie, incredible legacy, and yeah, cheers to the next 35, Little Mermaid. We love you. Thank you, George, for joining me today on this Orange Nerd Show. Where can everybody find you on social media, sir, including your Instagram account?
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky, or I should say maybe Blue Waters, under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you can find me right here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
There he is, coming down below with all your thoughts on Howard Ashman, the artistry behind The Little Mermaid, the talent behind The Little Mermaid, the voice cast behind The Little Mermaid. Anything you want to discuss about this movie, comment down below. We would love to hear from you. And until the next time, peace out.
Thank you for watching OG55. If you aren't already, consider becoming a member today.